Are you more convinced today than ever that KJ was the victim of foul play?
Yes.
I've experienced a lot of weird stuff since my sister Maura disappeared in 2004.
She have learned that there have been remains found, and I have learned firsthand today from the coroner's office that there were clothing found near those remains.
In the early 2000s, the world witnessed some of the most puzzling and heart-wrenching disappearances ever recorded. And despite relentless searches, dedicated investigators, and even some help from internet sleuths and online detectives working around the clock, many of these cases still remain unsolved. Maura Murray was a bright 21-year-old nursing student with a promising future. But on the cold, icy night of February 9, 2004, she just vanished without a trace. That night, Maura was driving along Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire, when her car skidded off the road and crashed into a snowbank. And at approximately 7:30 p.m., a school bus driven by Butch Atwood came upon a black Saturn sedan, crashed into the snowbank. Atwood, a 60-year-old school bus driver and former emergency medical technician, immediately stopped to offer assistance. He noticed Maura was shivering, but saw no visible signs of injuries. Maura assured Atwood that she had already called AAA, even though there was no cell phone reception in the area, and AAA has no record of a call that night from her. And despite his concerns for her well-being, she just insisted that she did not need help.
I just asked her how she was. She said she was shaken up. I couldn't see any blood on her face, and she was shaking like this. I says, okay, I'm gonna go call the police.
According to one police report, Maura apparently pleaded with Atwood not to contact the authorities. The entire interaction lasted only a minute or two, and even though Atwood was hesitating to believe that she didn't actually need any help, he ultimately decides to leave. And knowing there was no cell phone reception in the area, the bus driver continued home and called the police himself at around 7:43 p.m.
Hi, this is 911 emergency. How can I help you today?
This call would set in motion a series of events that would lead to one of the most mysterious missing persons cases in recent history. Atwood's encounter with Maura Murray would be the last confirmed sighting of her, and by the time the police arrived at 7:46 p.m., just minutes after Atwood's call, Maura was nowhere to be found. She had just vanished. What makes Maura's disappearance so unsettling is the sheer lack of clues. Her car remained at the crash site, along with some of her belongings, her ID, credit cards, and even alcohol, which led a lot of the officers to believe that she may have been drinking. Police also found a rag stuffed in the car's tailpipe, an odd detail that has never been fully explained. Maura's family and some investigators believe she just wanted to get away for a few days. They stated recently in 2019, according to an article from the Associated Press on Boston 25 News, that she had apparently recently resolved a criminal matter involving the use of a stolen credit card around that time, and caused extensive damage to her father's car during a crash. A few days before she disappeared, she was working her security job at UMass Amherst when her phone rang, and after she picked up, she burst into tears. The caller and the subject of the call, it remains unknown. With police on the scene, they noticed there were no footprints in the snow, none whatsoever to indicate where she may have gone. The police had even brought out tracker dogs to help track down the scent of Maura, or anything in there. And the tracker dogs ended up losing Maura's scent within 100 yards of the accident site. Police stated that there are no indications of any fight or any struggle at the location and around her car. Maura's cell phone and wallet were missing from the car as well, but everything else was left behind for some reason. And despite extensive searches covering 20 miles along Route 112, including the use of tracker dogs and search helicopters, nothing of significance was ever found. The lack of physical evidence has led to various theories, including that Maura may have hitched a ride from the scene, or that she possibly could have wandered into the woods and succumbed to the cold. But with her car being there, and even her turning down help from the bus driver, Butch Atwood, who offered her assistance earlier. It leaves us asking why she would just go into the woods, and why there were no footprints in the area. A contractor apparently reported seeing a young person moving eastbound on foot a few miles away from the scene, around 8 to 8:30 p.m. But this sighting was reported months later, and its accuracy is uncertain, but probably would explain where she disappeared to if it was true. But once again, no footprints, and the police only arrived minutes after the 911 call. It's very possible that she could have been a victim of foul play. Now, the bus driver who stopped to help Maura, the one who called 911, reported that he saw several cars pass on the road before the police arrived, but he wasn't close enough to witness Maura getting into any of them, or if any of them could have stopped there as well. With all of this, police have speculated that Maura may have hitched a ride from the accident scene, but this is just a theory without concrete evidence. Her disappearance has since become one of the most infamous cold cases in American history. We have theories that range from her intentionally disappearing to escape a troubled life, all the way to her falling victim to foul play at the hands of some stranger, or possibly even someone she knows. The case of Maura Murray has captivated the public for nearly 2 decades, and the unique group has played a pivotal role in keeping her story alive. Online forums that were dedicated to Maura's disappearance, they began popping up as early as 2005, creating a space for people to share theories and information on what happened that night. Described as the first crime mystery of the social media age, Maura's case has seen an evolution in online sleuthing, particularly with platforms like TikTok.
I've experienced a lot of weird stuff since my sister Maura disappeared in 2004.
In 2022, a TikTok video posted by Julie, the sister of Maura, gained over 3 million views, reigniting the interest in Maura's case. However, the involvement of these internet detectives hasn't been without its challenges, and some family members have faced harassment from those who believe that they are obstructing the investigation. But despite the challenges, the increased attention from online detectives has led to new information being sent to law enforcement and private investigators.
This one hurts because I thought we finally had it. This one is worse than the other false alarms or dead end.
Fred Murray, Maura's father, he has never stopped searching for his daughter. He remains convinced that someone knows what happened that night and that a cover-up may be involved. But despite the widespread interest, Maura remains missing to this day, and the mystery of her disappearance has only deepened over time.
Yeah, I'll be 23 back on the found property case, and I'll be 76 to the Williams Road address to see if I can find the owner.
On September 16, 2009, Matrice Richardson, a 24-year-old California State Fullerton graduate, was arrested in Malibu, California. She had apparently been acting erratically at Jeffrey's restaurant, ordering food and drinks, but was unable to pay her $89 bill. Restaurant staff apparently described her as mentally unbalanced, and they ended up calling the police.
Hi, I'm calling from Joffrey's restaurant in Malibu. We have a guest here who is refusing to pay her bill, and we think she sounds really crazy. She may be on drugs or something.
Matrice was taken to the Lost Hills Sheriff Station in Calabasas, where reportedly her mental state had continued to deteriorate. And at around 1 a.m. on September 17th, the Sheriff's Department released Richardson without her phone, purse, or transportation. In the middle of the night, it was a decision that would have tragic consequences. Despite warnings from her family about her recent erratic behavior, and despite her mother calling the station and offering to pick her up that night, this information was apparently not passed on to the watch commander.
I think the only way I will come and get her tonight is if you guys are going to release her tonight.
Yeah.
If she's going to be held in custody for some type of arraignment tomorrow, then I will wait until tomorrow. She definitely has no place, she's not from that area, and I would hate to wake up to a morning report, lost somewhere with her head chopped off, so I guess I would have to come and get her. Oh my God.
And they just let her go. They held all of her belongings and left her out there to fend for herself. She walked out into the cold night with no way to contact anyone and no means of getting back home. And her family, unaware that she had even been released in the first place, assumed that she was still safely in custody. But when they called the next morning, they were told that Matrice was gone, that she had vanished into the remote, rugged terrain that was surrounding the police station.
She was arrested last night. This is the first time she's been arrested. She's in an unknown area that she's never been in. She's without a vehicle. Nobody can find her.
And where was this at? Where was she arrested at?
Your facility. Her name is Mytrice Richardson.
Okay. Do you know if she's here now, or was she released?
They said she was released.
Okay. And what time was she released?
At just shortly after 12 a.m.
Neighbors reported seeing a woman who may have been Richardson sleeping on a porch later that morning, but she was reportedly gone when deputies arrived.
We just had a strange woman walking through the backyard here. It's a fairly large property, and she was sitting on the steps right on the back of the house here. This is kind of a circular driveway, and the gates were closed, so we don't know where this woman came from.
For months, extensive air and ground searches were conducted, but no trace of Richardson was ever found. And on August 9th, 2010, nearly 11 months after Matrice Richardson's mysterious disappearance, a grim discovery was made. State rangers combing through an abandoned marijuana farm in the Monte Nido area stumbled upon skeletal remains. The location, which was approximately 30 miles from the sheriff's station, raised immediate questions about how Matrice could have ended up so far from where she was last seen. And the condition of her remains told a haunting story. Matrice's body was partially mummified, her skull and spinal cord detached from the rest of her skeleton. And perhaps the most puzzling was the scattered nature of the evidence. She was found naked, with her clothing, like her belt, bra, and jeans, was discovered hundreds of feet away from her body, down the ravine. And the remains were largely obscured by mulch, twigs, and leaves, suggesting they had been there for some time. Matrice's mother speculated that her daughter had to have been enclosed somewhere at some point to become partially mummified. This theory added another layer of complexity to an already perplexing case. And despite extensive examination, the coroner's report classified the cause of death as undetermined. The partial mummification and the condition of the remains made it impossible to determine exactly how and when Matrice died, which, in my opinion, seems to be planned that way. See, the disappearance and death of Matrice Richardson is enveloped in so much controversy, raising serious questions about the actions of LA County Sheriff's Department, that it really leads me to believe that a police officer possibly has something to do with her death and disappearance. I mean, it's not unheard of for some police officers to get convicted for taking advantage of a woman suspect, or being convicted of being a brutal criminal. It's happened, and that may be what happened here. Now, inconsistencies soon emerged in the case. An email surfaced during a civil lawsuit that contradicted the deputy's testimony regarding Matrice's behavior at Jeffrey's restaurant. The email described her as a little ditzy and acting unusually, directly conflicting with later claims that she was not exhibiting any erratic behavior at all, which highlights the potential lapses in judgment by law enforcement regarding Matrice's mental state and their decision to release her without proper support or evaluation in the middle of the night. These discrepancies between the initial incident report and subsequent testimonies raise significant concerns about the accuracy and transparency of this investigation. Here's another problem, and reason why a police officer could be a suspect for this: the handling of Matrice's remains. It's another focal point of controversy here. Her bones were moved before a proper forensic analysis could take place, despite clear guidelines from the coroner and complicating an investigation. Assistant Chief Coroner Ed Winter explicitly instructed detectives not to touch or remove the remains. However, in a shocking turn of events, the LA County Sheriff Department's homicide detectives decided to collect and airlift the remains against these direct orders. This decision violated standard protocol for crime scene investigation Moving remains before proper forensic analysis can destroy crucial evidence and compromise the integrity of the entire investigation. This violation of procedure raised serious questions about the handling of this case. Complete fuck-ups like contaminating evidence of a case after directly not following orders is a leading reason on why I believe a police officer has something to do with her death and disappearance. And further mishandling came to light when forensic anthropologist Clea Koff made a startling discovery. Inside Matrice's body bag at the mortuary, she apparently found clothing that had never been sent to the crime lab for testing. And this type of oversight represents another significant lapse in the investigation process.
We have learned that there have been remains found, and I have learned firsthand today from the coroner's office that there were clothing found near those remains. It is unfortunate that they will not let me view those articles of clothing.
Like they're rushing it through. Police also lied to the family of Matrice Richardson regarding the case as well. In the months following her disappearance, her family repeatedly asked the sheriff's department if there was any video footage of Matrice at the station. They were consistently told that no such footage existed. This denial persisted for 4 months after Matrice vanished. And then, in a surprising turn of events during a meeting between the family and then Sheriff Lee Baca, Captain Tom Martin of the Malibu Lost Hill Station finally acknowledged the existence of video footage showing Matrice Richardson at the police station. The sudden revelation of this video's existence, after months of denial, raised serious questions about transparency and truthfulness within the police department as a whole. It left her family wondering why they had been misled for so long and what other information might have been withheld or lost. And this shows an intent to try and hide another piece of evidence from this case. When the family was finally allowed to view the footage in April 2010, it showed disturbing scenes of Matrice exhibiting erratic behavior while in custody. This footage contradicted earlier statements that she had not displayed any signs of mental distress. They argue that law enforcement should have recognized her behavior, and they should have conducted a mental health evaluation for letting her go, as well as letting her go with all her belongings.
Specifically told the deputy, "This is uncharacteristic of my daughter. My daughter does not go places and not pay a tab." I continuously reiterated, "Something is wrong with my daughter. She appears to be in a crisis state."
In 2011, the family sued the county and reached a settlement of approximately $900,000. The Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors has re-established a $20,000 reward for any information leading to a conviction in Richardson's death.
We have learned that there have been remains found, and I have learned firsthand today from the coroner's office that there were clothing found near those remains.
On January 10th, 2013, Kendrick Johnson, a bright and athletic 17-year-old, was last seen walking into Lowndes High School in Valdosta, Georgia, and the next day, his lifeless body was found in a rolled-up gym mat in the school's gymnasium. But the mystery surrounding his death would ignite a nationwide controversy that continues to this day. Classmates found Johnson's body upside down in an upright wrestling mat. According to others there, his face was swollen and bloodied, and bloodstains were found nearby. Despite the disturbing scene, the initial investigations by the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office quickly concluded that Johnson's death was a tragic accident. Their theory? He had reached into the mat to retrieve a shoe and became trapped, eventually suffocating. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation's autopsy supported this conclusion, ruling the cause of death as accidental positional asphyxia. But for Johnson's parents, and for majority of the world, this explanation defied logic. But even before that, from the very beginning, his family doubted this story. The Johnsons questioned how their athletic son could become trapped in a gym mat.
Man, it's so light, he could have pushed that, just rock and it would have fell over. I tried to get in it. I couldn't get no forward my neck muscles into the mat.
They pointed to inconsistencies in the reports, such as bruising on Kendrick's chin, noted by paramedics, but absent from the autopsy report. That his face was severely swollen, and his body showed signs of trauma that did not align with the official explanation of suffocation. This whole thing just seemed like a cover-up to most people that's looking at it from the outside, including myself. Moreover, the gym, it was a public space, and it's constantly monitored by security cameras. But yet, the crucial footage from the hours leading up to Kendrick's death was mysteriously missing. These coincidental gaps in the footage only fueled suspicion, leading many to believe that key evidence had been tampered with or intentionally deleted.
They've been altered in a number of ways, primarily in image quality, and likely in dropped information loss. There are also a number of files that are corrupted because they've not been processed correctly and they're not playable.
Determined to uncover the truth, the family obtained a court order to exhume Kendrick's body for an independent autopsy, and what they discovered was shocking. The second autopsy of Kendrick Johnson, conducted by private pathologist Dr. Bill Anderson in 2013, did indeed present findings that contradicted the initial autopsy. Dr. Bill Anderson in Florida had concluded in his autopsy that Kendrick died from unexplained, apparent non-accidental blunt force trauma to the right neck and soft tissues. Now, this finding directly challenged the original ruling of accidental positional asphyxia. Specifically, Dr. Anderson identified a 2 to 3 centimeter bruise on Kendrick's neck. This small injury, measuring less than an inch, had formed the basis of his conclusion. It is important to note that Dr. Anderson did not claim Kendrick was beaten to death, contrary to some public interpretations. This second autopsy also revealed something even more disturbing. Kendrick's internal organs were missing, and his body cavity had apparently been stuffed with newspaper. Everything from the brain, heart, lungs, liver, and every other organ from the pelvis to the skull, they were all missing. This gruesome finding shocked the family and fueled further suspicion of murder and the cover-up of their 17-year-old son. The response to these findings were mixed. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation stood by their original autopsy result, and U.S. Attorney Michael Moore announced he would review the case, but stopped short of launching a formal investigation.
I will follow the facts wherever they lead.
Lowndes County Coroner Bill Watson expressed caution, stating he wasn't about to refute anybody's findings, as he wasn't the doctor.
The only reason that I was questioning this incident whatsoever was I wasn't called to the scene in a timely fashion.
He considered calling a coroner's inquest, but noticed such procedures were rare. The Johnson family saw the second autopsy as vindication of their suspicions. They sent the report to various authorities, including the U.S. Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, hoping for a renewed investigation. However, critics have raised questions about Dr. Anderson's credibility. Though there was no statement officially disproving the findings of the autopsy as false, the police remained firm on the original findings, and many critics even began digging into the past of the doctor. And it was later revealed that he had been fired from his position as a state medical examiner in Florida for unprofessional conduct, though the findings from his autopsy that he submitted were not officially disproved. Despite the controversy surrounding the second autopsy, subsequent investigations, including a 10-month review by the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office in 2021, have maintained the original conclusion of accidental death. As the case gained national attention, more questions arose. Surveillance footage from the school gym has significant gaps, with hours missing from 2 cameras. A forensic analyst recruited by CNN confirmed these discrepancies, which just adds to this entire tragedy.
Investigators are always suspicious and should be suspicious, and it's suspicious that that time period is not there. So yes, I would be suspicious. And until I have the digital video system in my hand, until I can say, or an investigator can say, everything is intact, this was what's recorded, I would still be highly suspicious of it.
The Johnson family believes something much darker lies beneath the surface of their son's death. And rumors quickly began to circulate about Kendrick's death. Some pointed to a potential altercation with fellow students. It was apparently reported that Kendrick had an argument with another student prior to his death. And some speculated that the boy, along with his brother, who was reportedly a star athlete, may have been involved. What makes this theory even more compelling to some is the influence that the student's father may have had. See, their father was an FBI agent, leading many to speculate that connections were used to protect those involved and cover up the true cause of Kendrick's death.
Are you more convinced today than ever that KJ was a victim of foul play?
Yes. To date, the case remains officially closed, ruled an accident. But for the Johnson family and their supporters, the fight for what they see as justice for Kendrick continues. And as the years go by, there's one question that remains. Will the truth ever come to light?
Are you more convinced today than ever that KJ was a victim of foul play?
Yes. Investigators are always suspicious and should be suspicious. And it's suspicious that that time period is not there. So yes, I would be suspicious. And until I have the digital video system in my hand, until I can say, or an investigator can say, everything is intact, this was what's recorded, I would still be highly suspicious.
She's on the ground. Who is it? My mom! Someone broke into that window. All right, hold on.
So, on March 3rd, 2020, Ohio police were called to a 911 emergency call at a home in Akron. And there, they found Brenda Powell lying on her kitchen floor, suffering from around 30 stab wounds to her neck. Her daughter, Sydney, was in the house and initially claimed it had been a violent home invasion. And despite her own injuries, there were inconsistencies that emerged from her story. See, at the time of the attack, Brenda had been speaking with one of Sydney's college professors over the phone. And mid-conversation, Brenda just suddenly started to scream, and then the line went silent. When the professor called back, someone else answered, claiming to be Brenda, but he immediately suspected it was Sydney, and fearing something terrible had happened. The professor called 911, and police arrived promptly. The chilling scream and urgent 911 call had given the police enough probable cause to force entry into the home. And what awaited the officer inside was a horrifying scene.
Akron Police! Akron Police! Where's your mom at? Okay, stay right here.
No, there's so much blood. No, please! Mom!
Man!
She's in the corner now! No!
Stop!
Mom, we gotta figure out what's going on.
Can you sit down? Car 9, get that 32 rolling here quick. We got a female down, blood all over the place. Sergeant Smart, you just got a crime scene. Take her outside. You got she's blood all over. I don't know if she's breathing. Secure the scene. She looks like a 22. She looks like she's been down for a while. There's blood all over the place. There's a knife by her head and stuff like that, and there's a huge pool of blood. No, I think she just walked in on it. There's a broken window in the back, so if you can just put up some crime scene tape. As soon as AFD gets here, they're going to pronounce her, I'm sure.
Upon inspection, it became evident that Brenda had not only suffered multiple stab wounds, but she had also been struck on the head with an iron skillet. Man, her injuries were so severe that it was stated she was fighting for her life.
Please, she's on the ground. So there's...
Who is it?
My mom! There's someone broke into that window.
All right, hold on.
She's on the ground. And there's
Hold on. Come on. Come on.
Is she gonna be okay?
Come on.
I want my dad.
What happened? What's going on? What's going on?
We heard a bang. We heard a bang. And she told me to get out. And then heard screaming, so I came back, and she was on the ground.
Okay, you heard a
I ran
bang.
out back. There was a bang, someone broken.
What is your name?
Sydney.
Are you cut?
I don't think so.
Yeah, you're cut somewhere.
I don't think so.
Yeah, your hand.
No, I was helping her. I grabbed her.
All right, stop.
I grabbed the knife.
Yeah. What's going on? I don't know. We just got
dad. I'm the dad.
Okay,
Sydney. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Daddy!
And Sydney, visibly shaken and injured, seemed to be in shock and barely holding herself together. Even when her father, Steve Powell, arrived, Sydney remained inconsolable. Police quickly secured the crime scene, determined to piece together what had truly happened.
The back window's broken in!
So you're gonna have to.
Daddy!
Inside there? So.
I don't know! There was so much
Lady in the
blood!
house, okay? She's got minor cuts.
Inside the house, police found a broken window alongside the knife used to stab Brenda. However, blood smeared on the outside of the window suggested it had been broken after the attack. And despite this evidence, Sydney claimed that the intruder had entered through the window, asserting it was shattered before the assault. And this contradiction raised immediate suspicions and marked the beginning of a series of inconsistencies in her account that detectives would need to investigate further.
Interesting. Somewhere that's not you. Okay, do we know who, where, which way?
That is the younger guy. I'm looking through here and I can see pictures. And there's a whole basement set up for what looks like.
Yep, hey, sorry, I'll call you right back. Bye. All right, let me go report that.
Yeah, there's guys on man. It's probably her brother.
Well, I'll see if we can find out who else lives here.
Given the gravity of the situation and the multitude of unanswered questions, the police took some time to interview neighbors in the area. They needed to gather as much info as they could, and at this moment, the only person providing coherent insights was Sydney's father.
Okay.
Do you live here, sir?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my wife and there's my daughter.
How old's your daughter?
She'll be 20 in March. She's 19 today. Is she coming out?
Yeah. Not yet, sir. Just kind of hang out.
Sydney, can you tell me what happened? Huh? Sydney. Sydney.
On its way?
Yeah, it's coming.
From where?
Yeah, that's them right there. I can hear them.
Have a female hair.
In their efforts to unravel this mystery, police interviewed Steve Powell and one of Sydney's friends at the station. They were hoping they could clarify what had happened. However, Steve was completely unaware that Sydney was the attacker and that his wife was in critical condition at the hospital with little hope of survival. And so the detectives realized they would have to deliver this devastating news to him sooner rather than later, which added to the complexity of this unfolding investigation.
Who did you get a call from? Yeah.
Got a call from him, called me.
Oh, okay.
He said there was a call, went out, a distress call from the University of Mount Union where my daughter was going, and said, female in distress. I said, well, that's funny because Brenda's there, my wife. So I called Brenda, and it rings and rings on the cell phone, no answer. I call Sydney back, rings and rings and rings, no answer. I call Brenda back, ring, 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 no answer. I'm pacing around. I call Chief back, and I'm on the phone with him, telling him there's no answer. My doctor calls me back and said, "Oh, Mom's on the phone with Mount Union." I said, "Well, cops are on the way." And she went, "There's been a break-in," and she just started going off. She said, "What?" She said, "There's been somebody broke into the house. There's blood everywhere." She was hysterical and crying.
So at first, when you talked to her, she said, your wife is on the phone with Mount Union.
Yes. And as soon as I said, cops are on the way, the hysterics started.
Is she still attending?
Well, as far as we knew up until today, yes, but apparently not for the last, I don't know, maybe couple weeks.
Now, What Sydney had failed to disclose to her parents was that she had been expelled from college weeks before the incident and had been deceiving them ever since. But her friends knew. She confided in her friends, including Lauren, who lived in the same dorm.
Now, we understand that Sydney was your roommate at Mount Union?
Yes, she was for last year and then this year until she left.
And so you've been friends ever since your freshman year at St. B?
Mm-hmm.
Go over each other's houses, everything like that?
Yep. Well, she started off in exercise science freshman year, her first semester. But then she didn't like the classes, so she switched over to psychology and sociology. But then she didn't really like that, so this year she switched to education, and then she didn't like that either, and that's one of the reasons she left, is because she really couldn't find what she liked. I think she struggled in her classes. I don't think her grades were the best, but she didn't really tell me that, because I wasn't really struggling. I think she kept a lot of stuff hidden, because when we were just talking or with our friends, she always seemed happy. Like, she seemed okay, like I said, I couldn't tell until the end where she was kind of just like struggling and she kind of was sad and just like, Lauren, I don't know what to do. I think she felt like everybody around her kind of had figured out what they wanted to do and she hadn't.
Understanding Sydney's mental state leading up to the incident is crucial for detectives, so that they can determine whether she simply snapped or if this was premeditated. However, Sydney claims she has no recollection of the events surrounding the attack, and she attempts to build her entire defense on the assertion that she blacked out, even alleging insanity. And this complicates the investigation as police lack solid evidence to conclusively label Sydney as the guilty party here. Yet, they are beginning to uncover that she had been concealing secrets from nearly everyone.
Well, I know she's had anxiety for a while, but I think it was this last semester, like starting coming back in January, when it really started, that she was kind of more like upset because she really didn't know what she wanted to do. My friends and I were worried for her because we didn't know what was going on because she didn't tell us. And
Lauren sensed that something was amiss and attempted to support Sydney. And initially, she had no reason to doubt her friend and offered as much help as she could during such a difficult time. However, as time went on, even Lauren became wary of Sydney's evasive behavior.
I could tell she was getting more upset, like more sad. And I told her, like, I'm here, like, you can tell me I'm here for you. If you need anything, I'm here. But she never really opened up until she was leaving and saying that she was struggling with school and that she was kind of trying to figure out what was going on, and that's when I started to try to help her.
Let's talk about this. You're her best friend, and I know this is difficult, but tell us about her relationship with her parents.
Her and her parents had a really good relationship. Like, her mom and her were best friends. Probably, like, they did everything together. Like, one of the reasons she went home was to be with her mom. They were always close. She never said anything bad about her mom. She never ever talked about having an argument with her mom. Like, I can't recall every time she'd be going home, she's like, I can't wait to see my mom. Or when she goes home for weekends, she'd be like, oh, my mom wants me to come home so we can hang out and like watch movies. And she loved being home.
At this stage, Sydney found herself entangled in a web of lies that would end up being too difficult for her to untangle. Rather than admitting the truth, she chose to portray college as an unsuitable fit for her. Sydney attempted to persuade her parents that they could save significantly on tuition costs if she left school to explore other pursuits that she wanted to do.
What's going on? Are you not going to school? She goes, I'm overwhelmed in school, and I don't really like what I'm doing, and it seems like it's a waste of my time and your money. I said, well, but that's all part of it. Nobody's going to tell you you need to do what you're doing when you're 20. You need to figure it out.
However, the narrative didn't align with what she shared with her friends.
So when she's talking to you about, the problems she's having at school, did she mention that she tried talking to her parents?
Yeah, I know she definitely, especially when she left, she talked to her mom about leaving. They kind of made that decision together to leave Mount. Like, she told them that.
Lauren's suspicions were confirmed. Sydney had been lying to everyone, and at the same time, she deceived her parents, who remained unaware of her college troubles. That was until they received a call from a professor. Alarmed, Steve and Brenda began crisis talks. determined to uncover the truth about their daughter's situation and understand the depths of her struggles.
So I went back, I called my wife from my daughter's phone. She picks up, she was working down at Children's. And she goes, what's wrong? And I basically told her, I said, Sydney, I think the reason we can't get on is because she's unenrolled. She hasn't been going to school.
So Sydney found herself entangled in two different lies. One for her friends and another for her parents. Failing grades aren't the end of the world. It really isn't. And a lot of parents will still support their child during tough times like these. However, Sydney believed her parents would be angry, and she couldn't bring herself to admit that she had been asked to leave college, further complicating her situation.
Yeah, we asked her she was doing, and she said she was good. Like, she acted like what we would see as normal. Like, she was laughing, she was having fun. She said she got jobs, because she worked at the Akron Harbor Docks. She's worked there for a couple seasons, so she was gonna go back there. And then she also said she was looking for another job, and like everything was good, and she was trying to figure out like for next year and all this stuff, and she was gonna talk to her parents about housing, trying to come back to Mount.
Once she got to my union, or anytime actually, did Sydney ever drink alcohol at all, or she did? Okay, just kind of describe that for us.
She liked to drink. There was an incident in the fall of our freshman year where she drank too much, and she wasn't alcohol poisoned, but she did end up in the hospital. Her mom came and got her at like 2 in the morning. Usually after that, her and I were together, and if she did drink, I usually kind of like slow her down after kind of her limit, because she's small.
Detectives suspect Sydney snapped during her mother's phone call with the college professor, attempting to silence Brenda and cover her lies forever. Despite claiming she couldn't remember anything, Sydney made some critical mistakes that helped detectives piece together the horrifying scene of events. So, in a fit of rage, she struck her mother with an iron skillet and then stabbed her over 30 times with a steak knife. To deflect suspicion, she impersonated Brenda on the phone, and then she staged a break-in, trying to conceal her involvement in the crime while the tragic truth unraveled.
I made it in far enough to see the back fit. When you go into the front door, you come around the kitchen, you go in, you can see there's like a pass-through between the kitchen and the family room. The back of the house, I could see the right hand, there's 2 big sliding windows. I could see that window was clearly, it looked like it was busted. Went down the hallway probably about 2 feet, just you see blood all the way down the hallway.
And unfortunately, Brenda did not survive her injuries, and she passed away in the hospital. The county medical examiner concluded that she died from blunt force trauma to her head and the multiple stab wounds to the neck, officially ruling her death a homicide. This heartbreaking news fell to detectives, who had to inform Steve that his wife was gone.
Well, really bad news. Your wife passed away.
Detectives looked into Sydney's claims of an intruder being responsible for the attack, but their investigation revealed inconsistencies that contradicted her story. The evidence began to tell a different tale, leading to one final, devastating duty for the detectives, which is them having to inform Steve that his own daughter was responsible for killing his wife.
What happened? I don't think someone broke into the house. I don't know if your wife and daughter got into an argument, got physical. I mean, the window was broken, but there's no forced entry into the house. Did your wife and daughter ever have like really heated arguments? This is not possible. Your son's outside. He doesn't know.
My son's here?
Yes.
Would you like one of us to just go be with your son?
I don't know. Take your time. There's no rush for it.
Yo, it's unimaginable to consider what Steve is going through at this moment. His wife has just been murdered, and his daughter is the primary suspect. As the reality sinks in, Steve begins to accept that the detectives might be right, leading him to face the heartbreaking task of delivering the devastating news to his son.
Clearly they think Sydney did this. I lost 2. She's going to jail forever. Wife's dead.
I know they're going to do everything they can to make sure that they find out exactly what happened. Nothing's definite as of yet. They still have to do their investigating.
Where's Andrew? Is he just sitting out there by himself, or is he with?
When they're supposed to be.
Well, yeah, I don't want anybody in here with me when I talk to him. I don't want anybody. I just want me and him. That's legal. I don't care.
Yeah, you don't want any of
I don't want any of you. No, I just want Andrew.
So you just come and get us when you're ready,
I will.
okay?
You ready? I'm ready. They don't know. They haven't told me. They're investigating.
Cindy ended up being arrested and was charged with the murder of Brenda Powell. And initially, she pleaded insanity, claiming she had little memory of the events, including hitting Brenda with the cast iron skillet and fatally stabbing her. However, the jury did not find her credible enough and convicted her on 2 counts of murder, 1 count of felonious assault, and 1 count of tampering with evidence. And ultimately, Cindy Powell was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years.
Well, I have really bad news. Your wife passed away.
On April 29, 2022, CCTV footage captured prison supervisor Vicky entering through a back door. Just 30 seconds later, she re-emerged, this time accompanied by Casey White, a towering 6'9" convict. Casey White, who was serving a 75-year sentence for attempted murder, walked out with her. In an unexpected and shocking turn of events, they quickly fled in a car, leaving authorities scrambling to understand what the hell had just happened. Vicky, a seasoned prison supervisor with over 2 decades of spotless service, had just vanished alongside a dangerous criminal? Initially, police believed she had been coerced or maybe manipulated into aiding Casey White's escape. But soon, new evidence surfaced suggesting that Vicky might have orchestrated this entire plot. As a nationwide manhunt unfolded, investigators discovered the situation was far more complex than anticipated. The dark and twisted trail eventually led to a tragic end, with Vicky found dead, a bullet wound to her head. So, on April 29, 2022, prison officer Vicky informed her colleagues that she was transporting a prisoner to a psychological evaluation at the local courthouse. However, something didn't seem right because she was escorting the inmate alone, despite strict protocols requiring 2 officers for such transfers. But due to her senior position as a supervisor, no one questioned her actions, allowing her to leave without any issue.
When he brought in here, he had been seated on one of these benches and prepared for transport. Basically means putting handcuffs, leg shackles, and they're connected by a chain.
It wasn't until 6 hours later that police realized something was terribly wrong. Vicky and the prisoner had just vanished without a trace. And desperate for answers, authorities quickly turned their attention to the man she had taken with her, Casey White, a violent offender serving 75 years for domestic violence, home invasion, murder, and brutally assaulting a man with an axe. But one crime scene stood out to investigators even more. So apparently 7 years earlier, Casey White had abused and manipulated his then girlfriend to the point where she desperately tried to escape his violent grip. After she managed to reach a friend's house for safety, Casey tracked them down and broke in, armed with 2 guns and the intent to kill both women. Fortunately, they escaped his brutal attack and survived. Casey, however, fled the scene, launching a multi-state crime spree that included a string of carjackings. His rampage eventually culminated in a tense standoff with multiple police officers before he was finally captured.
Well, look, just calm down for me. Well, look.
Just calm down for me, brother. The sheriff will be here in just a minute, okay? Alright?
Sheriff's getting off on the Tanner exit.
In an unusual tactic, the police rolled a drink and a pack of cigarettes toward Casey, hoping it would calm him down and prevent a violent confrontation. Remarkably, this strategy worked, allowing the officers to safely approach and to make an arrest. During his interrogation, they gained an even clearer insight into the depths of his insanity.
I've been trying away just a killer ever since. I couldn't wait no longer. I had to do it tonight.
Do you regret what you did tonight?
I regret I didn't kill him.
Police now had a clearer understanding of the man Vicky had helped escape from prison, but questions remained about her involvement. After all, she worked at a completely different facility, and there were no plans for Casey to ever see the outside world again. However, a year later, Casey confessed to another murder, which led to his transfer to a different prison. And it was this pivotal moment that set off a chain of events that would ultimately end up in Vicky's tragic death. The murder case he confessed to ended up being a cold case involving a 4-year-old child, and it remains unclear why he chose to come forward now, but he provided specific details about the crime that really only the true killer would know. Following a brief trial, he was swiftly transferred to a new prison, the very same facility where Vicky worked. And Vicky, who was 56, had been divorced for several years and dedicated her heart and soul to her job as a model employee. She was well liked amongst her colleagues, but her life had grown dull and lonely, longing for change. And everything shifted when Casey entered her life. They gradually began to converse more, forming a connection that deepened as they discovered they shared the same last name. This sparked the belief that they were destined to be together. Vicky started to come in on her off days, and her demeanor was noticeably brighter. And despite appearing to have a fulfilling life on the surface, Vicky felt enchanted by her growing feelings for Casey, leading her to consider throwing everything away to be with a dangerous criminal. This kind of attraction, though not as rare as one might think, often draws people to those who embody risk and danger. They find a thrill in knowing that someone could harm them, yet they feel special that this person chooses not to. Additionally, Vicky had begun to feel trapped in her mundane daily routine, believing she had little to live for anymore, which only fueled her desire for a dramatic change. If Vicky could break free with Casey, it would at least bring excitement to her monotonous life, even if it meant sacrificing everything she had. While Casey was serving time at Lauderdale, Vicky granted him unrestricted access to areas of the jail that were typically off limits to inmates, including parts not monitored by security cameras. Many speculate that this is where the pair became intimate and where they devised their escape plan. At this point, Vicky had no inkling that this would become the worst mistake of her life. So 3 days before their escape, they decided to conduct a test run. Vicky informed her colleagues that Casey had an appointment with a judge at the courthouse, but in reality, there was no such appointment. Instead, they just spent 9 minutes sitting in her patrol car before returning back to the jail, using that to confirm that their plan may actually work. And with newfound confidence, they began preparations for the real escape. 2 days before the big day, they were captured on surveillance camera, passing notes believed to contain the final details of their escape plan. However, by the time authorities discovered this footage, it was already too damn late. On April 29, 2022, everything was in place for their escape. As a senior officer at the prison, Vicky wielded certain powers that she damn well intended to exploit. She arranged for 12 inmates and 5 deputies to be taken to court on the day of the escape, leaving her as the sole officer with any transport privileges. She then informed her superiors that Casey needed to be taken for a mental health evaluation, and reviewing the surveillance footage revealed clear signs that something was amiss. So Vicky had her firearm with her, which apparently is strictly prohibited inside the prison, and she walked in front of Casey instead of behind him, which demonstrated her trust in him, that he would not harm her. By facilitating Casey's escape, esteemed prison officer Vicky had thrown everything she worked for away, transforming in an instant from a respected officer to a criminal.
Vicky's always been a good girl. I went to school with her. It's got to be other people involved, and Vicky's just a scapegoat.
I feel like if she had anything to do with it, it was definitely love, because I don't see Vicky doing that, because she's always loved her job.
Vicky and Casey stepped out of the prison appearing completely at ease as they entered a patrol car and drove away toward freedom. It took a full 6 hours for anyone to realize they were missing, and when the prison called the courthouse to inquire about their status, they were met with the shocking news that there was no appointment scheduled. The grim realization dawned on them that Casey had meticulously orchestrated his escape. To evade the authorities quickly, Vicky and Casey ditched the patrol car and fled the state, leaving law enforcement scrambling for clues about their whereabouts. This marked the beginning of an 11-day nationwide manhunt. On the first day of their escape, police rushed to Vicky's home, but she was nowhere to be found. In fact, they actually learned that she no longer owned the house. See, as part of her plan, she had sold it for a fraction of its value, using the money to purchase vehicles, firearms, and most suspiciously, men's clothing. This was the first clear indication that Vicky did not intend to return, that she was ready to start a whole new life with Casey. Things took a turn for the worse for detectives when they discovered the abandoned patrol vehicle at a local shopping mall. And even more frustrating was the absence of surveillance footage in the parking lot, leaving them absolutely clueless about which direction Vicky and Casey had taken. On the second day of the manhunt, a tip from Vicky's family opened a new avenue for the investigation. They revealed that she had been renting a storage unit, and the police quickly located the unit where they found evidence that Vicky was using a burner phone. However, despite their best efforts to track this new number, law enforcement hit a dead end still. See, the discovery of the burner phone provided solid evidence that Vicky was the one to have planned the escape, and that she was not merely a hostage in this situation. In fact, she was a willing participant in this dangerous game.
Did you get the sense they were actually doing this together? He was not forcing her in any way?
Right, no, he was not forcing her. It was a mutual relationship.
You might think this discovery would help the investigation, but things only became more chaotic and perplexing from here on out. After realizing they were essentially back to square one, the police returned to the shopping mall where they had found the abandoned patrol car. They decided to go through all the surveillance footage from the days leading up to the escape. And that's when they spotted Vicky a few days before the escape, casually parking a car in a nearby lot. However, this wasn't her usual vehicle. It was a 2007 Ford Edge that she had purchased just days prior, and the police quickly pieced together that this had to be their getaway car. But when they returned to the parking lot to retrieve the vehicle, they were hit with another twist. Vicky had apparently left a decoy. The police had just lost their only lead, giving Vicky and Casey a 5-day head start. With the abandoned Ford out of the picture, investigators assumed the pair had found another vehicle nearby. And sure enough, they quickly picked up a new lead. See, a local homeowner reported that he had sold his Ford F-150 pickup truck to a man who approached his house on the day Vicky and Casey apparently went missing. The man was described as being around 6'9" tall and matched the picture the police showed him. Now, all they had to do was track down that F-150 so they can put an end to this manhunt. By day 6, another promising lead came in from the owner of a car wash in Indiana. He noticed a Ford F-150 parked in one of the cleaning bays for an unusually long time and suspected it might be abandoned. But something about this truck didn't sit right with him. He felt it was too nice to have simply been discarded. Growing increasingly suspicious, he decided to check the car wash's surveillance footage, and what he discovered was shocking. On the video, he spotted Casey getting out of the pickup and acting strangely, glancing around as if he was waiting for someone. And just out of frame, Vicky was in another vehicle, ready to drive off when Casey climbed into the new car and left their old pickup behind. The car wash owner knew something was off about this, and without hesitation, he called 911, alerting the authorities that they were hot on the trail of the fugitives once again.
I have a car wash on Weinbach. There's a truck been sitting in my bay since yesterday at 3 o'clock, and it's got the keys in it. It's got Tennessee license plates on it. I looked at my cameras, and the guy's kind of suspicious. Just one, I only seen one get out of it.
Was it a male?
Yeah, it's a male, a tall male.
The following day, law enforcement officials descended upon the car wash to search for the abandoned truck.
This is a return to a Dodge?
Yep. DNL 59.
Sam 130, then check. One F Frank T Tom R Robert W 12 W 86 K King C Charles 18262. Press 175. Attach that VIN of the run card, like the plate returns to this truck. It's a Ford. Good. Clear.
And it wasn't until 4 days later that this crucial tip finally reached detectives. By then, time was running out and every minute mattered. The moment the lead came in, they dropped everything and raced towards Evansville. It was now day 10 of the manhunt, and they were expected to arrive at the car wash by 9 a.m. The car wash owner's frustration boiled over, and tired of waiting, he decided to take action himself. And I don't know why, but he ended up picking up the phone and calling the local press as the media frenzy surrounding Vicky and Casey's escape reached a boiling point.
So I said, I get on the phone to Fox News. I said, y'all want a story? Yeah, we like a story. I said, I got one. Well, I got a convict over at my car wash. I got him on camera. He said, you talking about the one in Kentucky? I said, no, I'm talking about the one in Alabama with the girl. He said, okay, we'll be right there. They showed up. They got there 10 minutes before the marshals.
The United States Marshals were combing through the surveillance footage for any sign of the fugitives, and miraculously, they spotted a Cadillac that Vicky and Casey believed was off their radar. It felt like the walls were closing in on them, and even with this promising lead, the authorities struggled to track them down. It was becoming clear that the two could be anywhere in the country. However, fate had other plans. Back in Evansville on day 11 of the manhunt, a weary police officer was returning home for a long shift when he noticed a familiar vehicle parked outside Motel 41 and looked just like the Cadillac from the car wash. And without hesitation, he jotted down the license plate number. But there was just one problem. The Cadillac's plate from the car wash had never been recorded. But determined to connect the dots, the officer decided to check the license plate of the recovered F-150 they had found earlier. And to their astonishment, multiple traffic cameras had captured the F-150, and in nearly every frame, a Cadillac was following closely behind. So when they matched the license plate from the Cadillac to the one at Motel 41, excitement surged through the detectives. Now, they finally had a solid lead on their fugitives. Without wasting any time, deputy marshals took up positions around the motel, donning plain clothes and hiding in unmarked vehicles to remain covert. And meanwhile, inside of room 115, Vicky and Casey were glued to the TV, their heads racing as they watched the news break about the discovery of the Ford F-150. And little did they know, their time on the run was running out. The plan had been simple: bring Vicky and Casey in quietly without drawing attention. But things quickly took a turn for the worse. When Vicky suddenly emerged from the hotel room, she tossed a bag into the Cadillac, and right behind her was Casey. And despite their attempts to disguise themselves, Casey's towering frame was impossible to miss. Within moments, he was in the driver's seat, and they sped off before the authorities could act. The cops' carefully laid plan was instantly derailed. They had a backup strategy, which was to follow the fugitives and box them in, hoping to avoid a dangerous confrontation. But as they tailed the Cadillac, it became clear that they'd been spotted, and Casey wasted no time turning onto the highway and slamming on the gas. What followed was a wild chase through the traffic, swerving in and out of parking lots. And finally, in a desperate bid to escape, Casey veered off the road and tore across an open field.
God, airbags are going on. Let's get out.
Just as Casey thought he was making his escape, a police vehicle forced him off course, sending the Cadillac crashing straight into a ditch. This high-speed pursuit came to an immediate stop. But the tension was far from over. The officers knew all too well that both Casey and Vicky were armed, and the situation could escalate into a violent standoff at any damn moment.
Where's he at? Please, check him out. It's my wife, guys.
It's my wife. That's the best woman in the world right there. Please, that's the best woman in the world. Vicky, I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry, baby. Anybody in this world don't deserve it. She don't. When she herself, it hit me. But y'all ain't gonna believe me. I'm gonna say I killed her. Just like y'all say I killed everybody else.
After 11 days, the manhunt finally came to a close. Casey White was captured, unharmed, and placed in handcuffs. But Vicky White's fate was far more tragic. I mean, just weeks earlier, she had been a respected prison officer, known for her dedication and admired by her colleagues. But now, she lay in the wreckage of a stolen car, critically injured and barely conscious. A fugitive whose life had spiraled out of control.
Davis, you good with him? No, she's good. He's still got the winner hand. Yes, got a gun. All right, watch. Medic right here, medic. Get back. Still in her hand? Yes. Yeah, it's in her hand.
I gotta break this sucker up here. You go in? Well, I think we can reach in to get the gun. Clear that. It might be easier in the windshield. Oh, see, little open. Good idea. We got cover? Yeah. It's opening. It's opening. You got me? Yep. I'm gonna go for the gun first. All right, pull me out. All right, I got it.
Vicky White was found with a gunshot wound to the head, and Casey White claimed she had taken her own life. As the police closed in, her finger was still on the trigger when they found her. Vicky was pronounced dead at a nearby hospital later that day. Man, we may never truly know what Vicky and Casey had envisioned for their future. I mean, did they hope to disappear off the grid and live quietly? Or were they prepared to spend the rest of their lives on the run? I mean, whatever dreams Vicky may have had, Casey's plans for her were far more sinister. He later described her as a liability, someone ill-equipped for a life on the run. It's likely he would have abandoned or even killed her off soon. And as for Casey White, he was convicted of first-degree prison escape and sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole until he's 98 years old. This violent man who manipulated and helped destroy the life of a once respected prison officer will more than likely remain behind bars for the rest of his days.